In this country, the federal government moving ahead with its plan to ban some single-use plastics today. 6 items are on the banned list. They include plastic bags and some takeout food containers. The Environment Minister, Jonathan Wilkinson, says this is part of an effort to eliminate plastic waste in Canada by 2030.
A plan to keep plastic in our economy and out of our environment. This is a comprehensive approach that looks directly to address the most harmful single-use plastics while improving the way that we manage other plastics throughout their life cycle. Today, we are releasing a discussion paper relating to the government's plan to address plastic pollution. One important part of this plan is a ban on harmful single-use plastics that have 3 key characteristics. They are harmful in the environment, they are difficult or costly to recycle, and there are readily available alternatives. The proposed ban will address plastic checkout bags, straws, stir sticks, 6-pack rings, cutlery, and foodware made from hard-to-recycle plastics, particularly expanded polystyrene. Regulations with respect to this ban will be finalized by the end of 2021.
And with that, let's bring in the CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. You know, Janice, that announcement made in Gatineau, Quebec, just across the river from you, that was a news conference for about an hour. So a bit of it right there for our audience at home. But overall, what stood out for you as you listened to the minister and other ministers speak on that stage?
Well, it was interesting. One of the most kind of key things that Minister Wilkinson said was that he thinks the Canadians are way ahead of the government on this one. And if you look at the 6 items that are part of this ban, and now it should be noted, the timelines on this, you know, we're 12 to 24 months out before they will actually be banned outright. So this is a bit of a procedural step towards that end, not something that takes effect tomorrow. But you think about straws, you think about plastic cutlery, you think about polystyrene takeout containers, you know, in all of our lives, beer rings, you know, these are things that have started to disappear already. The industry has gotten the message. We as consumers have gotten the message. How many of us now in our drawers, well, when we used to go to work, in our drawers at work or in our purses when we're out and about, now carry some cutlery, carry silicone straws to reuse instead of buying the plastic ones, using real spoons instead of stir sticks, you know, seeing more paper or corn-based kind of alternative products to some of these things. The issue with the stuff that's being banned is that it can't be recycled. And what the government's trying to move towards is a world where you have more of a system where nothing ever ends up in a landfill. They've picked things for which there are alternatives. They have not picked things that could be recycled if it somehow becomes more economically viable to recycle things in the first place. I want to play a clip of he's Heritage Minister now, Stephen Guilbeault. He was at this news conference alongside Minister Wilkinson. He has a long background in the environmental movement. And he was asked about whether things are moving too slowly or you know, if he put his environmentalist cap on, what he would say about the government's approach. Take a listen.
The issue of plastic is not about simply banning, but a more holistic approach about this concept of circular economy. We need plastic for so many different things. The idea is to, as he's just explained very clearly, is to ban those that we can't reuse or recycle, and to ensure that those that we can recycle are recyclable to a level that's way over 9%.
And that's really the problem, because a lot of us think we're doing good when we're chucking our plastics into our recycling bin, but there's really no market for those plastics. We need to move towards a place where the plastics we are recycling are more valuable, where there's a real incentive for companies to think carefully about what they put in their packaging and be part of that packaging for the entire life cycle of the product. That is where they are trying to go with this discussion. It's one they need the provinces on board for, including Alberta, which really wants to step up and become a leader in innovative plastics recycling. Minister Wilkinson saying he believes what the federal government doing is entirely consistent with what Alberta's industry is hoping to kind of pivot to. We'll see if they're receptive to that argument, but also name checking a lot of big companies, they say, that are on board with this approach. We'll see how much cooperation they get from them in the months to come.
Now, as you noted, many Canadians are ahead of this announcement, but we're also in the midst of a pandemic where people have almost taken a step back here. A lot more Canadians using more plastic now than ever before because of COVID-19. How does that fit in with what we heard in this plan?
Yeah, gloves, masks, right? Not to put my kind of firm mom voice out there, but I think we all feel really discouraged when we see those plastic components on disposable masks lying at the side of waterways or sidewalks these days. Clearly we hopefully don't need the government to tell us not to do that. But Wilkinson's saying today, for these products, they are necessary safety counts, they get it. But they need to think about proper disposal. They need to look at whether some of these plastics could be part of a closed loop system. What are the opportunities to use recyclable materials in them or to recycle them after the fact? And finally, looking at whether there are maybe biodegradable products that actually break down and don't harm wildlife when they are making these things, because we're going to need them for the foreseeable future, aren't we, Michael? So hoping to carry on a provincial conversation about how to make that part of the plastics industry more sustainable too.
Okay, Janice, thank you. Appreciate it. Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Well, we want to continue this discussion because a ban could go towards a long way of reducing Canada's ecological footprint and also make good on one of the Liberals' campaign promises from the last federal election. To talk about this, we're now joined by Chelsearockman in Toronto. She is an ecologist as well as an assistant professor with the University of Toronto. Ms. Rockman, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Listen, I want to begin first and foremost with your reaction to the government taking these steps to ban single-use plastics.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I'd say I'm excited. I remember a year ago when McKenna introduced the plan to make a plan, and what I heard today.
Catherine McKenna being the former environment minister.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, just pointing out to audience at home, McKenna is Catherine McKenna, the former environment minister.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry. And the one thing I'd want to point out is that what they introduced today is more than just a ban on 6 single-use plastic items. It's more holistic than that. What we need is a more systemic approach to how we make, use, and waste our plastic. And so other things that are introduced include a standard to say 50% of plastics that are produced need to have recycled content in them. We also said that we're going to increase our infrastructure for recycling and recovery and use that through extended producer responsibility, which means that the people who produce the plastics help pay for its end of life. So there's a lot in there that I think is really exciting. And if we move forward with it, I'll be very pleased at the direction that Canada is taking.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the items, and I just want to read that out for people at home, because right now, specifically, they're targeting plastic bags, utensils, plastic rings, the type of things that would hold canned beverages together, takeout containers, straws, and stir sticks, but you say it's more than that. It's this holistic approach. Taken all together, what kind of impact do these plastics currently have on the environment?
Yeah, so that is what I research. I research how plastic in the environment impacts ecosystems. So I'll start by talking about right here at home in Toronto on Lake Ontario and our Great Lakes. So first of all, a lot of these products that have just been suggested to be banned, we find them in the environment. We did a cleanup not that long ago, socially distanced for International Coastal Cleanup. These are some of the top items we're finding in our parks and on our beaches. But it's more than that, right? When we sample fish as part of the sport fish program in Lake Ontario, we find plastic in the gut content of every single fish we sample. Sometimes we find up to 100 pieces in an individual fish. When we sample drinking water that's pulled from our lake, we see little bits of microplastic in there. So that mismanagement of our waste is coming back to haunt us in our own cup of water, for example, or on our dinner plate with seafood. And so it's absolutely time to act. And so I think it's really important is if this reduces the amount of plastic litter in Lake Ontario, this could be good for the ecosystem as well as for human health.
Mm-hmm. Let's expand that, though, because I think it's also worthwhile to note that there are Canadians that are surprised to hear that we're finding this level of plastic in the environment, whether you live in Ontario or live in British Columbia, in part because we have recycling programs. And I think a lot of Canadians are under the impression, well, I use plastic, but I am responsible and put it into a recycling bin. Why has that not proven to be effective enough?
Fantastic question. So the statistics right now is that 25% of recyclable material in Canada is is collected right in the blue bin, only 9% of that is recycled. And the reason for that, well, 25% is not enough, but 9% being actually recycled. The reason that's lower is because sometimes it's contaminated, right? We have to recycle right. So recycling isn't working, and it's not because recycling itself is bad. It's because the system isn't set up for recycling to work. We need to produce products that go in the bin. People need to understand what goes in the bin, and we need more markets in order to improve recycling. So it's on industry, it's on us, it's on waste management, which is why this holistic approach is really nice, and why they ban products that aren't just environmentally problematic, but also can't go in the blue bin.
Mm-hmm. And, I also want to pick up another point, though, too, and you touched upon it a bit, because as we look at where this policy goes forward, there is a lot of discussion right now about making industry responsible for recycling rather than putting that responsibility towards individual Canadians and municipalities.
Yeah, and so that is what is the extended producer responsibility, right? That says that industry, the people who produce this plastic, are responsible for it at its end of life. Obviously, that doesn't mean industry comes to our house and collects it. It means they help pay for it. Right now, municipalities pay for it, provinces pay for it. It depends. Those schemes are in place. In Ontario, industry does already pay for some of that management. So yes, that will improve the waste management we have. We'll produce a system that's better. We also have to know, as citizens, we have to be waste literate to know what material goes in the blue bin and to do it correctly. So yes, it's on industry 100%, but it is also on all of us, and that includes the government, you and I at home, researchers, and then of course the people who produce it.
Chelsearockman, thank you for this. Appreciate the time.
No problem. Thank you.
And Ms. Rockman is an ecologist and assistant professor at the University of Toronto.